So now I'd like to share with you some of the resources and advice that I would give any individual taking the NCLEX, particularly the NCLEX NGN. All right. So I'm going to start first with a couple of products that are out there on the market right now. And people often ask me as an NCLEX prep person, like, or, coach, what products work best? What products are most evidence-based and what products are most effective? Well, they all have pluses and minuses. So let's quickly go through some of what I've heard, and you feel free to share with me what you've heard as well, and I'll add it to my little list of recommendations here. But honestly, I don't recommend one over the other. I just think it's good for you to be aware of the properties of each and to kind of make an informed decision. Okay. So UWorld, let's start there. It's a computer adapted test. It uses adapted technology, which is something you see on the actual NCLEX. So that's great, right? It gives you a little bit of a feel for what you're going to see. Maybe not NGN, and I'm not sure that they are exactly on top of what the new NCLEX will look like. So with that said, in terms of the one the traditional version of the NCLEX that we've been looking at through April 1st, 2023, it's a pretty good approximation. All right. But the problem is that the wording in those UWorld questions don't tend to align with the NCLEX wording, right? It's kind of specific, too detailed, very long. It kind of gives away the direction you're going with the answer often in the UWorld questions. They're great for learning, but they don't necessarily always align with the way NCLEX would present it. But otherwise, they have a nice span of the NCLEX question types. Again, not sure about NGN. They have not released that version of UWorld as of today. When I'm recording this video, however, they do have all the traditional question types with the drop and drag and also the uh, hotspot questions. You get to experiment with those. And of course, select all that apply are plentiful there. And they also have multiple choice, right? That's the most used type of question. All right, so let's move on to Kaplan. Kaplan, from what I understand, is great for content review. A lot of the top tier colleges have Kaplan as their primary paid Kaplan review test prep for their graduating seniors, right? I think also their juniors have access to that as well. Kaplan doesn't, a lot like UWorld, the questions don't necessarily resemble NCLEX as much. Okay, so you really need to keep your eye on that when you're studying with Kaplan, you are essentially, um, you know, getting some good content review. And a Kaplan, though, out of all of these, is the furthest ahead, I believe, on NGN formatting, NGN standalone questions like the bow tie and the trend. And so definitely suggest that you check them out if you have access already. Like if you're at a school that has Kaplan or you're still on your Kaplan that you have available, I think they go up to 12 months after you graduate, use it, right? Don't just let it sit there. All right, Princeton review, excellent. Qbank closely resembles what the NCSBN is looking for in an NCLEX question. Why? Because they purchased their questions from NCSBN. All right, and I think another unique thing about Princeton review questions are that they are arranged, the skill sets that they have, what do they call them? They call them skills drills. They call them drills, not skills. They call them the problem sets that they arrange for you there, drills. And I think they work very much like that. As a coach, I definitely see how drills, a great way to talk about what you're doing when you're practicing those practice questions. Now, they're arranged by content need area or client need area. That should be client need area, not content need area. And those are referring to, physiologic integrity, the psychosocial uh, the name of the excuse me as the name is just escaping me right now, psychosocial integrity, health promotion and maintenance. Those are the client need areas that you're going to be looking up to Princeton review for. All right, Archer Review, they actually come highly recommended when it comes to those readiness assessments. They're quite predictive of how you might perform on the current traditional version of the NCLEX. So they have unlimited randomization of questions. People seem to like that. And the computer adapted test looks like the NCLEX question. Apparently, Archer Review writes questions that actually look like NCLEX questions. All right, so you can do a content review um, on Archer Review without the computer adapted testing. So that is a nice feature as well, where you're just kind of going through each question and learning as you go through the questions through reading rationale and referring to their other content review resources. All right, and then finally, Hurst Review, great content review videos, according to lots of folks who've taken Hurst. It's very common review program in the nursing programs. However, the Qbank is apparently unremarkable. All right, so there's not a lot going on there. All these Qbanks are going to take a hit when the NGN questions become what people are, testing. I think as of April 1st, I think a lot of these NCLEX preparation companies will respond just in time to the changes. So we'll see that all happen as it evolves. Now, some other additional resources and advice would include free Qbanks. All right. If you click on that link there, it'll take you to Nurses Labs. Nurses Labs, if you haven't heard of it, excellent, excellent free bank of 6,500 plus questions. Actually, it's probably less than that, but there's some redundancy that you'll see among the different categories of questions that they have there. But there are some pretty good categories, and they're arranged by body systems, which I think is a wonderful way to study or help yourself prepare for the NCLEX, because these case studies, typically ask you to recall what you know about, systemic disease processes. So it doesn't hurt to study your problem sets that way. So something to think about. Now, if you've heard of Mark Klimek, or Mark K, as a lot of folks call him, he has those lectures that have gotten out and about on the internet. But there's one version of the lecture that I think is legal. There are some versions that he's went through, I think, YouTube and kind of cleared out because they were illegally obtained. But there is one version of his lectures that are kind of moving around that are actually fair game. And that's a 12-part series. And he, as a former test writer, has a lot of I think a lot of mnemonics and ways of thinking about things that can be helpful to a lot of test takers. It's really, uh, I think if you have the time, not a bad idea to see what he's talking about, particularly lecture 12, because it really talks a little bit about the psychology of the exam and how you might approach strategy. Okay, Mark K. And then you have those study guides. They're plentiful. There's so many. You can go on Etsy, you can go on Reddit, there's Your Nursing Educator. I think she has a wonderful 57-page guide that has a lot of advice and suggestions and recommended crammed into that little guide. So really there are others, but I suggest you make your own. All right. And I'm going to show you in a minute what I mean by that. I suggest you make your own. So um, but how are you going to make it, right? I'm going to share a little bit more about how you're going to make it as we move further, but or what concepts you're going to use to set up your study guide. But I do think you need to know about a couple of key reference items that I think are essential if you're going to be doing NCLEX preparation. Saunders, if you haven't heard of it, it's called Saunders Comprehensive Review. It looks like, I'll show you in a second, I'll show you a picture of it. All right, and then you're gonna need Lippincott, all right? These are just established names. They're like Bibles for, I won't say Bible, I'll say sacred text. That's pretty much saying the same thing. You absolutely do need to be able to consult these books. So whether you've got them with your coursework in your nursing school, it doesn't matter that you might have one that's a couple of versions older. If you have Saunders, you have a great resource reference for NCLEX review. Okay, Lippincott's another one. La Charity is another one. The La Charity book. And there's so many other resources that are out there. Picmonic comes to mind as well. So I'm just throwing out there some resources that are tried and true, tested among test takers who have been successful, who went on to be successful. So, and there are many mobile apps. I have a few that I subscribe to and or have downloaded, and I think they're great as well. So you don't want to have too much stuff, but you don't want to have missed out on resources that could have been effective because you just didn't check or dig into it or research it or figure out how you might get your hands on it. Okay, Saunders, comprehensive review for the NCLEX RN. There's also one for the PN. And Silvestri, the name, I think it's a mother and daughter team. I'm not sure, but the Silvestri, and the latest version is the ninth edition. All right, and not a bad one to have. Now that's for the PN there, and then there's Lippincott's for the PN, but there's Lippincott Q&A review for the RN. So what you're getting are going to be a lot of questions, facts, updated um, explanation around, concepts, so it's really good. I recommend it because their folks work along with the folks in NCSBN, all right? And they work through committees and they work through conferences to like get certain information out there to the nursing schools about how we should be preparing our nursing students for this forthcoming test. So not bad for you to kind of study according to the folks who are kind of helping write the questions. So check those resources out above all others, right? But definitely check all the resources you can gain access to out and just decide what's best for you. All right. Vetted, curated by me. All right. Through my YouTube channel, Dr. Community RN, are some playlists. Okay. Content review playlists. And when I say playlists, I am referring to just a group of videos that are all related to the content areas that are listed here in these web links. Okay, so if you go to your slides, you'll be able to see this slide, and if you click on the hyperlink, it ought to take you out to a playlist. Now, in the interest of time, I'm just going to go ahead and let you know that you have access to those playlists, but again, they're vetted by me, and you're going to see some of your favorite content creators on YouTube who primarily create content for nursing students or, NCLEX candidates. So with that said, these playlists are not really for taking you back into nursing school related um, topics. It's really focused on NCLEX. All right, so cardiology, these are major topics, high yield topics that you will definitely see. All right, so maternity OB is there, ABGs, fluids, electrolytes, ventilators, chest tubes, all of that's great fundamentals content, right? Psych, mental health, uh, definitely a nice playlist for you to get into. And I think what's great about these playlists are that if you just click on them, you can save yourself a couple of hours of like finding a good video that's going to give you what you need. All right, so if you're ever struggling, you're like, man, I could really use some quick content review on a certain neurological topic, check out my playlist. There's a large chance that I've included in that playlist a very relevant NCLEX topic that you very well could be asking yourself about in that moment. I try to keep the videos around 30 minutes or less on an average of about 5 to 10 minutes because we don't have a lot of time. So good quick video with audio and visual clues can take you a long way. So definitely check that out. All right, so the way you're going to be studying for the NGN or the Next Gen NCLEX will very much determine how well you're able to perform, I believe. Okay. So, with that, I've created a study planner, something that is really going to try to get at the most important topics. Of course, you can't study every single topic you learned in nursing school. Not every single topic is relevant to the priority care, safety, and health maintenance of your patient, right? So, with that said, the majority of the questions that emerge will be the type of question that uh, wants you to use your clinical judgment. All right. And I get more into clinical judgment as we move further along in our journey together. But I will say at this place here, you will need a study plan. You don't just need a study plan, but you need a way to keep up with all the high yield topics. Okay. And then you need a way to be able to recall all that you're learning in these various forays into content review, right? You're going to have a way of cataloging it, keeping up with it, so that as you get closer to the test, you can reaffirm what you know and what you already have learned. Okay. And then possibly put more emphasis on those topics that you're still struggling with. All right. So let's take a closer look here. Let's see. The goal was to zoom in a little bit closer in on this 5 week and 10-week study plan here. Okay. We're going to go ahead and finish by looking in a little bit closer at this study guide, all right, and the study plan. All right, in creating your own study guide, you're going to be able to, in the planner that I've created for you, my NCLEX study guide, you're going to add your own notes, either using your keyboard, or if you have a stylus, you could do that. You're going to be prompted generic names, indications for this is a pharmacology page, right? We're looking at benzodiazepines, particularly psychotropics as a drug class, right? So we're looking at some of the generic names that you might have, and they're listed here as this person has entered them there. All right, drug indication, like why are you using this drug? Main side effects, of course, adverse side effects. So you're prompted throughout this, it's about 197 pages in this study guide, because there are many, many topics, several drug classes, and the study plan covers over 5 weeks, depending on the study plan you decide to go with. If you are covering 5 weeks, you're going to have 5 weeks of new study content. So, what is the purpose of the guide? To kind of expose you to the different content areas, as each of the pages has a different content area there. All right, you can use your stylus as well to add those notes if you're going to do this digitally. If you're going to do it on a laptop, then again, you can create text boxes. And then you can always print this out. This is 197 pages, so it's a lot of printing. But if you wanted to print it out, put it in a 3-ring binder, you could use pen. All right. You can add any links that you want to if you're using the digital version, that will take you out to the videos, for example, perhaps the ones that I've curated for you on YouTube. Okay. So add your links, add your questions, add images, draw sketches, do whatever you need to do to make this study guide your own. That's how it goes from being an empty fillable notebook to a meaningful study guide, chock full of details that will help you stay focused on the most important content for the NCLEX preparation that you'll be doing. Okay, there's also a page where you can just add in your own notes. All right, so for each major topic, at the end, towards the newer topics, at the end of the tab, um, related to that particular topic, I'm going to leave a few spaces for you to add your own pages of data or your own notes, okay, digitally, or again, you can do this uh, with by printing it out and adding your notes that way. Okay, so thank you so much for your time, and I will see you in our next session. All right.